Hey, what's up there, YouTubers? It's me again, Brian, excuse me, aka Gamer55551, and I am back with a video review. And for this video review, we're going to be taking a look at Crysis Remaster, a remaster of, I believe, the 2007 first-person shooter Crysis for the Nintendo Switch. The game is, last time I checked, game is not available yet, but it will be coming to the PS4, Xbox One, and I believe PC via Steam. And if you're interested in any gameplay footage, I'll have a link down in the description below, and you can check that out. In 2007, Crytek released a game basically called Crysis. It was basically a first-person shooter, almost kind of similar to supposedly the original Far Cry and so forth, though. Now, I never played the original Crysis before, but I've heard of it, though. So much, though, it has sort of earned the meme of, can it run Crysis? And most of this has to do with the fact that the game was supposedly a very graphically demanding game, and there were even some people that had powerful PCs back then, but had a hard time, struggled or had a hard time running a game like Crysis. Therefore, it earned the meme, can it run Crysis, and so forth. So what's kind of interesting this year when we learned that Crysis Remaster was coming to PS4, Xbox One, and the PC and all that stuff. And supposedly all those versions were supposed to come out on July 23rd. However, when the trailer for a lot of the versions showed up, a lot of people saw those versions not looking as good as many people thought it would be. This led to the developers at Saber and Crytek to basically put those versions on hold or change the release date while they addressed all that problem. Many people thought that this would apply to the Switch version, but for some reason, Saber Interactive, the same folks who did the surprisingly good Witcher 3 Wild Hunt port on the Nintendo Switch, the Switch version was still on for July 23rd, and now that the Switch version's out, I honestly have to say that after investing some time into the game, I will say that it's fun, but there are some caveats, particularly one that I think is an issue I really think the developers should address in, say, like a future patch or anything like that. So why don't we get started with the pros and cons, and we'll start off first with the pros. And the first one has to do with the gameplay, though. The first one I do want to talk about is that the gameplay, for the most part, is a linear first-person shooter. There are some open-world elements into the game, though. Basically, you can approach the game in any style you want to. You could approach it stealthy, or you could approach it going gung-ho and all that stuff, but the game definitely gives you plenty of options to approach each of the objectives that are being handed to you. And there are some optional objectives, though. I believe those are the yellow dots up there that you could complete, though, before you do the main objective, which are the green dots to be exact. So the gameplay it's still linear and all that stuff, but there are some open world elements to it, and I definitely like definitely like this approach. I like the linear first-person shooter, not to mention the ability to customize your weapons and so forth. So from a gameplay perspective, I will say I did have fun with this title. The next thing I do want to talk about is an interesting feature, at least for the Switch version, in terms of the suit functionality. Now, in the game Crysis, for those who may have not played it, you do have the option, in at least the Switch version, to activate either cloning or maximum shield. Not cloning, I mean cloaking. I'm sorry, cloaking. My bad. Though the cloaking part basically a little bit can help in terms of sneaking up on certain enemies, though, while the maximum shield will basically add extra armor and so forth. Your shield and your suit do regenerate in terms of your health regenerates, so does your suit's abilities regenerate as well, as long as you're not being shot at and so forth. Now, there are some people who have complained about the fact that it doesn't have like the weapon wield kind of approach. For me personally, I prefer the approach where they map it to the button, and I really didn't have and I certainly like that. I like the fact that you can activate the cloak with pushing the trigger of the R button, or activate the shield with push of the L button, or simply just hold down the left analog stick to activate the running feature and all that stuff. I personally prefer that approach over doing like a activating the suit's functionality via like a weapon wheel or anything like that. I'm not really a big fan of that approach and all that stuff. So I like the fact that a lot of the suit's functionalities are mapped to the buttons on the control pad. And last but not least, I do want to point out how the game runs. And I will say it does run well though, but I'll get to the con in that part. And I will say it does look kind of impressive though. I mean, I applaud the fact that Saber Interactive was able to port this game over to the Nintendo Switch, and it doesn't look, I mean, that bad. Obviously, it won't look as good as, say, the PS4 or the Xbox One version. It is running at 720p at 30 frames per second, but given how Saber Interactive handled Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, it is pretty impressive that they were able to get this game running onto Nintendo Switch. So technically, yes, Switch can run Crysis. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we'll get to part 2, which are the cons. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with our second part of our video review of Crysis Remastered for the Nintendo Switch. So now that I gave you the pros, why don't we get started with the cons? And there are really only 2 cons, at least based on my time with the game, that I think kind of stick out. So we'll start off with the first one though. Now, as I mentioned earlier in the pros, I talked about how the game does run well on the Nintendo Switch, and it does though. But I will say it's far from being 100% perfect. And there are certainly some glitches that I ran into that were unfortunately had to make me like restart the game or anything like that. Some glitches I ran into were like when you reach a checkpoint, the game freezes for just a little bit and all that stuff. 3 times that this has happened to me for it. One of them will be in the gameplay footage if you want to check it out though. I've had one situation where my character froze to the point that I had to restart the game. Twice that happened where the game basically just shut off and said that your set basically was completely just turned off, and I had to basically reboot the games or anything like that. So there are certainly some performance issues in regards of the Switch version though. While it hasn't ruined my complete experience, fun or enjoyment with the game or anything like that, it is noticeable, and it is kind of frustrating that there were issues where I had to reboot the game, to be exact. I am hoping Saber Interactive and Crytek will address this like in a future patch, but it is a little bit unfortunate that this existed and all that stuff. And last but not least, I want to talk about the visuals. And I do want to say that, as I mentioned before, that the game does run at 30 frames per second at 720p, and it looks okay. I mean, like The Witcher 3, I mean, it doesn't look terrible, but it's not the best looking version, however, out there though. Although the PS4, the Xbox One, and the PC version are currently not out yet at this time though, when they do come out, more than likely they're probably going to look better than the Nintendo Switch version does, mostly because it will have that, supposedly they're saying that it will have that ray tracing software feature, which unfortunately is not in the Nintendo Switch version though. Does the visual ruin the game? I mean, no. It's okay. I mean, it's passable though, but like The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, another game that Saber and I have to work on, there are certainly probably better looking versions than the Switch version though. Overall, I would say I'm kind of mixed on this one though, to a certain degree. I will say that I do like the gameplay. I do like the linear, but somewhat of the open world and approach the situation you want to approach to the game, though. I still think it's fun. It's a single-player, first-person shooter, and so forth, and I definitely enjoy those type of games. So it is an enjoyable and fun game, and I like how a lot of this functionalities of the suit are mapped to your control, to any of the buttons on your controller and all that stuff. But I will say performance is kind of a hit and miss for me though. Yes, the Switch can run Crysis though, and it runs it pretty well at 720p 30 frames per second, but there were some hiccups on some performance issues that I ran into, particularly the parts where I had to restart the entire game, especially ranging from my character freezing in place to the game just kicking me out for no apparent reasons due to an error and all that stuff. So it's kind of a mixed bag, to be exact. I enjoy it, but I do think that there are some issues that I believe that Saber Interactive and Crytek need to address to ensure that the Switch version runs better and all that stuff, and hopefully a future patch can address that. So overall, I have to say I'm kind of mixed on this one, to be exact. I don't completely hate the game and all that stuff. I still think I like these linear first-person shooters. I like the open-world elements that they added to it, but I do think the performance issue is definitely a sticking point for me, and I do hope that, like I said before, Saber Interactive, the folks who handle the Switch version, and Crytek are able to address some of the issues, particularly the parts where the game basically kicked you out, or basically the issue of your character sticking in place and all that stuff. So for me, it's kind of it's kind of a mixed bag in regard to the Switch version. But still, I would say I won't go as far as saying the game's unplayable or anything like that. It's still enjoyable. I still would like to see Crysis 2 and Crysis 3 come to the Nintendo Switch if it is possible though. But I do hope that some of these performance issues are addressed at some point. Hopefully, like I said, hopefully a patch will address it, but hopefully if Crysis 2 and 3 do come to the Nintendo Switch, that they address any of the concerns people had with the first Crysis on Switch and addresses those if those games are to be ported over to the Nintendo Switch, or if that port ever happens. Okay, this concludes this video review of Crysis Remastered for the Nintendo Switch. And again, these are my opinion. What are yours? What are your thoughts about Crysis Remastered coming to the Nintendo Switch? Are you glad that they brought this game over to the Nintendo Switch? Have you played the Switch version yet? Do you think the game runs well? Have you ran into any technical issues? And if so, has that prevent you from enjoying the game in any way? Do you hope that they would bring Crysis 2 and Crysis 3 over to the Nintendo Switch? Do you agree with what I said in this video? Do you disagree? Do you have a difference of opinion? As always, sound off in the comment section below. Let me know what you think. And if you like this video, I hope you hit the like button. I would appreciate it. And I hope you do subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you do, make sure you hit the bell icon for notifications of any new videos I put up. Also, feel free to share this video if you want to. And feel free to donate to my channel if you like. You can do it through PayPal Me or Patreon. Links will be in the description of this video. And I will see you again next time when I do another video. Hopefully that'll be soon. Until then, from Southern California, wish you all a good day then. Bye!